Washington, what is good? It is a delight to be here once again in my kind of hometown. I lived 2 years, but it was really formative, so it feels like longer than 2 years here. It is a delight to be back. Thank you all so much for coming out and packing the house. This is fun. We've got a fun crowd here. I see we've packed every seat except for the very front row, because I'm very scary. But we are here to break down some very pivotal chapters in The Lost Hero. This is going to be a very exciting time. Our first TNO-only show doing The Lost Hero and none of that other Harry Potter garbage in the second act. So let's get right into it because we have some fun things to discuss. Obviously, I'm never on this journey alone. I'm joined today by someone who is a wonderful longtime friend of mine. You may know him from his appearances on this podcast, or our work together in A Tribe Called Yes, or other improv things in Seattle, or you might know him as the guy who went to my University of Washington project management graduation ceremony because I got a +1 and I knew there would be free food and I had no one else to take because Kelly and I were long distance at the time. So he came with me as my +1 to my graduation ceremony. Please make some noise for our guest, Nitika!
Hello, everyone. Great to see you again, for those of you who I've already seen, which I'm sure is some of you. How many of you have been to a Mike Schubert live show here in Seattle before? First time? So
cool.
Then most of you don't know me. That's great.
Yes, so what we're going to be talking about today are chapters 25 and 26 of The Lost Hero, which are both called Jason, weirdly enough, but we will retitle them. Why don't you tell the folks your history with the Heroes of Olympus books as a whole, The Lost Hero specifically?
Sure. So I read, overall, the Percy Jackson series, the original 5 books. I read those just in January and February, all 5 of them, to prepare very quickly to be on the show, because I love Mike and I love being on his shows and I love what he does. And so I read those books very rapidly. And I was going to be on 2 episodes, one in Seattle and one in Vancouver, and I read up to the point where Mike was at. So for the first episode, I knew exactly what he knew, which is what I've done today for this book. So we are in the same spot. I cannot spoil him. I literally cannot.
Didn't have to install a trapdoor on the stage today.
That's right.
Easy and make
However,
things easier on the venue.
Between now and Monday, I will finish the book, and I will be able to gloat and lord it over him, and also be very terrified about accidentally spoiling something about the end of this book. So he can be jealous of me, because I will suddenly have a lot of knowledge about what exactly is going to happen next.
Well,
but today we're equal.
We're on the same page, and that page is whatever page number it is. I didn't write that down long enough, but we're here in chapter 25. Now, where we last left our heroes, we had the very cool fight scene that was going on in Monocle Motors, where they were taking down the Cyclopes, and then they started to reform, so they said, oh, let's get out of here. So, chapter 25 begins, first 2 words, Jason dreamed, and I wrote, let's freaking go! Love a dream chapter. I was very excited, and then I wrote my notes. Oh, right, he's passed out. So I had, forgotten that was part of the equation at this point. But I was very excited to get some Jason dreams in the mix.
Yeah, I don't fully understand when. I know dreams happen all the time for demigods, but it's unclear to me what things exactly trigger them to happen. This one is pretty normal. You're asleep, it's a good time to be dreaming.
Right.
Whereas other times, sometimes people are awake and they just accidentally pass into a dream. But this one, I felt the same as you did. I was like, cool, starting with a dream, that means it's going to be a big deal.
Yes, I was excited, especially because I feel like we haven't had a Jason dream in a minute. Like, I feel like the last one was the big house, which is a lot of chapters ago. So. Yeah. He dreams, it continues the opening line, it says, Jason dreamed he was wrapped in chains, hanging upside down like a hunk of meat. And I wrote, wait, isn't that exactly what's already happening? This doesn't feel like a dream, this feels like real life. And it's an interesting situation, because he's in copious amounts of pain. So he wonders aloud, if I'm dead, how can it hurt this much? And then a woman's voice, and I wrote, Anytime it's just someone's voice, it's nondescript, it's always confusing, but a woman's voice informs him that he is not dead, for it is not yet his time. and then calls for Jason to speak with her. And I was like, ooh, this feels like Hera to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's pretty much one of two options. There's Hera and Dirt Woman.
Yes,
so.
Dirt Woman. Capital D, capital W.
That's right.
So what's interesting is that Jason can hear everything that's going on with Piper and Leo and the fight and all of that, but it feels like it's in a different plane. It's happening in a different plane of existence than where he currently is. And his thoughts sort of travel elsewhere. So he finds himself in an earthy, tendril-themed cage, and then I wrote, okay, either he's talking to Hera, or this is bad news, thinking for a second his aura or something is in the other cage. I didn't know if it was going to be this weird thing where we just get, like, lifeless dummy Jason,
sure.
and, you know, his soul's been removed or whatever, but it just seems like he's talking to Hera in a dream.
But hanging upside down in the cage?
Ooh!
Unclear if that's in both planes of existence or not.
In my interpretation of it, I thought he was feeling the upside down and the pain and everything, and then when his thoughts left his body, he was back into normal mode.
Okay.
If you thought Jason was hanging upside down, make some noise. Ooh. Okay, that's some folks you've had.
Well, which for me, I'm like, look, the fact that there's room for both of them, but also if he's hanging upside down, like, that's a big cage and not so constrictive. Like, she's got some space in there to, like, relax. In my mind, I'm picturing the cage from the Sia, Shia LaBeouf, Maddie Ziegler music video. Elastic Heart, that's the one. That's the cage I'm picturing, though. That was exitable easily, not the case for Hera.
Right, yeah. I'm also just trying to think of the logistics of having a conversation upside down, like having to look and talk. I feel like it'd be a lot of strain on the neck. Yeah. So I will stop doing it because I do have to talk for the next 2 hours. So he is in this cage with Hera, and it's the cage from his previous dream in the same location and everything. Next to him is Hera, who welcomes him to her prison. She tells Jason that he will not die today, as his friends will prevail. And then she says, for now, which you never want to hear. Jason doesn't love the for now. Hera says that tougher trials lie ahead, since the literal Earth opposes them. Not someone you want to make as your enemy.
No.
And I feel like at this point, it was pretty clear that the bad guy is Gaia, because you earlier, when reading, didn't have that. When did it sort of clicked in a couple of chapters prior to this, yeah?
Yeah, it was like, there was like an earthy reference, and there was like plant matter and rocks, and I'm just like, oh, literally Earth, Mother Earth. It's got to be Gaia, so. Yeah.
Either we're on the same page and we're feeling great, or we're on the same page and it's Juniper Round 2. Juniper, the sequel. So Jason asks why she can't just escape if she's a goddess, and then she shows him by doing a nuclear explosion of sorts, and it doesn't destroy the cage, it just makes her look more tired, so very much actions speak louder than words. Hera really trying to live up to the comment section of TikToks about the Percy Jackson TV series, and showing, not telling.
Yeah, that's a wild way to learn that a god has nuclear bomb powers.
Yeah.
And also, like, when they, in the prophecy, when they previously had been talking about, like, Hera's rage, I'm like, oh, that's it. It's the fact that she can be a nuclear bomb at any given time. Which then made me wonder, is Robert Oppenheimer a demigod? Because Barbie is definitely a demigod, House Aphrodite,
of course.
which means that Barbenheimer is a full god.
Ooh, yeah. See, my line of thinking was more of where's Hera's nuclear bomb power-up in Hades 2. That's true. She does have some good attacks, though.
I would select that boon for sure. Yeah.
So, Hera explains that some powers outrank those of the gods, and though she can be many places at once, when the majority of her essence is caught, it's like a foot in a bear trap. She says that only Jason can find her, and she grows weaker with each passing day. Jason asks her how she got caught. In the first place, Hera says that she could not stay idle, as his father, Jupiter. So I think the first time she has ever referred to Zeus as Jupiter, but then we'll see throughout this conversation she kind of flips back and forth between the two.
Yeah, it's like, is that like when she's like super mad at him? It's like calling someone by their full name.
Oh, it's like, when your parent gives you the Michael Joel Schubert.
Canonically mad at Zeus / Jupiter all the time.
Yeah, true. Maybe he's just always Jupiter. Yeah. But yes, she says that she couldn't stay idle while Jupiter withdrew from the world to try and lull their enemies back to sleep. Apparently Jupiter believed that the Olympians had become too entangled in mortal affairs, and especially too entangled in demigod affairs, after agreeing to claim them all. And I gotta remind Zeus of this. You gave Percy carte blanche. You said, I will grant any wish. And then he had a wish. And then you were like, oh, Are you sure? Maybe, you don't mean, good joke. No, you said anything, you gotta do it, man.
Are you sure you don't want a PS5, Percy?
Oh, Percy. Are you, come on, what about courtside Knicks tickets?
I did find it also interesting with like her referring to him as like Jupiter. I can't quite tell. It seems to me like Jason is having this effect on others, like as if it's almost outside of their will that they're using Roman terminology. I don't know what that's all about. I'm clueless.
No. I like it because it's a specific thing, and it would make sense because she says, I'm not just Hera, I'm also Juno. So she's got it inside. It's like when people grew up in a city or state that has an accent, they go off into the world, they kind of lose that accent, then they come back to that state, and then they start talking way more like that accent.
Forced code switching.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like when you're Texan, and then you go back to Texas, and then after a week in Texas, you start talking a little bit more like this. Yeah. And then you have to, get it out of there.
And, I mean, more or less, Jason is the WWE because he won't stop forcing Roman on other people.
Nice. I know just enough about wrestling to get this reference.
That's for the one person in the room who's a wrestling fan. Thank you.
So, anyway, Percy Jackson. Now, Hera says that Zeus thinks that claiming, all of this increased amount of claiming, caused their enemies to stir, so he closed Olympus. Hera says that she rarely understands Zeus, specifically says Zeus this time, Zeus's emotions and decisions, but this felt too paranoid even for him. So, kind of begging the question of, is there something else afoot? Which feels like yes, because there were two separate lines where Hera was saying, I don't know, this felt a little bit weird. And that feels like maybe there is something weird. So she says the following, quote, as Hera, I might have been content to follow my lord's wishes, but I am also Juno. Juno Moneta, they called me. Juno, the one who warns.
Juno, pregnant teenager and keeper of the hamburger phone.
That was my joke! Nice! I was going to say, I recently watched that movie. Holds up. It's great. It's really fun. It's so fun. When Kelly was very, very pregnant, she was like, we should watch Juno. And it was a great time. And I bawled my eyes out multiple times. I would say the only inaccurate thing, the delivery pregnancy scene, quite glamorous.
Well, let the record show we get equal credit for that joke.
Ching. So, what she did though... Oh, sorry, hold on. What did my notes here say? I'm confused. Okay. Cool. Okay. Leave that out so I come to the shows. She sat idly by... She didn't want to sit idly by as the descendants of her Roman people were attacked. The book said this whole thing about her being the protector of Rome, blah, blah, blah. And she sensed danger in this sacred spot and listened to a voice in her head that told her to come here. And that spooked her because gods don't have consciences, but this voice was something similar to that. She just had this instinctual feeling, so she came here to investigate on the day that Zeus closed Olympus. And I don't know, I mean, I've postulated that this place is some sort of Roman safe ground, especially because Jason feels like it has a tie to him. It's like the opposite of Camp Half-Blood, where he felt like I'm not supposed to be here, so I wonder if the history of this location, it's a torn down mansion. Yeah. I have theorized, Latin camp, that was the previous big house, and that's where we're at.
I have further thoughts on this, but I'm going to save it for the next chapter because it's connected to something that we learn a little bit later.
Intertwined.
But I do like the fact that Hera Juno's done a lot of self-reflection in her cage. Like she's been asking herself questions. And do gods really have that opportunity very often? Aren't they super busy most of the time? Ooh. And but maybe it wasn't just her. Maybe she had decent reception where she is, and she did a telehealth Zoom call with a therapist.
It's like when I walk to the grocery store and I forgot to charge my headphones, so they die on the walk home, and I have to be alone in my thoughts.
The worst.
Sometimes productive, other times no. I thought about that awkward thing I said once in second grade.
If you think about it, your job is keeping other people from being alone with their thoughts.
What? It is a joke that I will make to other podcasters, especially during COVID times when people would talk about the importance of jobs. I would be like, folks, sometimes people get bored at airports, and we are here for that. So Juno thinks it was a trap. Sorry, Jason thinks it was a trap. Hera agrees and calls herself even more impulsive than Jupiter, this time Jupiter. She said that it's similar to the last time she was captured. That time it was done by giants and it started a war, so I gotta check in with Dr. Moya. It will get referenced later in these chapters that we're covering, but I still want to ask her about it. And then we get this quote, "The gods can only defeat them with the help of the greatest living heroes, and the one whom the giants serve, ... she, in italics, cannot be defeated at all, only kept asleep." So, sounds very daunting.
Yeah.
Jason says he doesn't understand Hera, sorry, wait, what? Oh, okay, cool. Jason says he doesn't understand. Hera says that he soon will, and then I wrote, yeah, in 9 chapters or so. Next time he's the narrator around. The cage tightens, and then humanoids gather at the edge of the pool. They have more than one set of arms, which is terrifying.
Yeah, they're described as bald-headed, lumbering, hunched-back humanoids, and as a member of that class of beings, I don't appreciate the inference.
For the folks listening at home, Nathan dramatically removed his hat to reveal the truth.
A bald head and a 6'4" frame.
So they've got one more than the normal. Sorry. So they have an additional set of arms. Scary. Then Jason also hears wolves, but he can tell that they are more aggressive and bloodthirsty as opposed to the ones that he heard with Lupa. So that's not great. Hera warns Jason to hurry, saying that her keepers approach, and he is beginning to wake. She says that she will not be strong enough to appear to Jason again, even in dreams, and Jason very smartly tries to get in some questions really quickly before she goes away. He's like, "Hey, Boreas said something about a gamble that you made? What's that gamble? Could you please tell me about it?" And Hera's eyes look wild, which worries Jason that Boreas was right. And Hera explains that it is an exchange, and it is the only way to bring peace. Quote, "The enemy counts on our divisions, and if we are divided, we will, in italics, be destroyed. You are my peace offering, Jason, a bridge to overcome a millennia of hatred." And I don't like the sound of that, because I feel like peace offerings, it's not like they are treated well afterwards.
No, and oftentimes an offering is consumed and no longer exists after the fact.
So I don't like that. Jason doesn't like the sound of it either. Hera says that she cannot tell him more. Chiron nods in the distance. And Hera says that he has only lived this long because she took his memory and commands him to find this place. And I just wrote my notes in all caps, what does that mean? And later on, I don't know if it's in this chapter or the next one, but later on, Jason's like, what are you talking about? How is removing my memories keeping me alive? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't fully understand. I mean, and like the idea of like bridging like two sides, I'm just like, what do we know so far that could be juxtaposed sides? We've got giants and gods, potentially. Mm-hmm. We have Romans and Greeks. They keep on playing with that
That's
thing.
where I'm at.
Which I need to go back and read how things went from ancient Greece to ancient Rome. I know like they're geographically different places, kind of. I mean, Rome eventually became everything. I'm almost 40. Roman Empire. But what is it about him specifically? It doesn't feel like it fits to the gods, giants things, but it feels like it could fit between the Greeks and Romans things. But like, I don't really understand. I'm not sure what he would do. Yeah. It's not like they can't necessarily speak each other's languages and he's going to be an interpreter. Mm-hmm. I'm in the dark. How do you feel about it?
I feel like there is clearly some sort of Jason history that's important. And I think that my original theory of him being a reincarnated old guy, that was my original theory, if you haven't been listening to the Newest Olympian, is that, or if any, who here was like dragged along to the show that has no idea what's going on? All right. I always try to make sure everyone has a good time, so don't worry, I'm here for you. I had this theory that Jason was maybe old school from maybe like Jason and the Argonauts Jason, and then Hera brought him back to life for this new task. I don't think that is what's happening, but I do feel like he has some sort of important history, probably linked to the destruction of whatever is here in this area. Like whatever happened with the destruction of this mansion, I feel like Jason was either there or responsible, or someone did it because of him. Maybe like chosen one type of thing, like when you time travel in Looper to try to do the thing to stop the thing, or Terminator, like stuff like that, where it's like, this is important, like, because there is a world in which he was just like really young and this happened, right? Like, it could have been like where he froze in time. Maybe he was like this age, and then something happened and he was put on ice and he came back. Like, I just feel like there is something where he was a pivotal portion, and that's why the offering of him specifically makes the difference. Maybe he did something bad and it was like, if I give you over to the Titans, it will be revenge, or like, you have this innate power, I had to hide the memory because you can, spirit bomb or whatever. Like, I feel like there is a reason it's Jason, and I think it is a specific reason of the memories. And with her saying, I have gotten rid of your memories to keep you alive, I think it's either one of two things. But what I'm leaning towards is maybe, like, if he knew what happened in the past, maybe he wouldn't want to go along with it. Like, maybe he was a part of something so bad, or it's like a Harry Potter sacrifice to Voldemort thing, like, oh, if I take me out, I can end the suffering kind of thing. Yeah. Like, I wonder if it's like almost a self-aware knowledge of the danger and destruction he could bring about if he knew his full self.
I feel like it could be that he's like afraid of like the danger or destruction that he could cause, or maybe he would be so one-sided that right now he's like working to create this peace between two sides, it feels like. But if like he gets his memories back and he hates a particular faction, then maybe he'd be like, I'm not doing that shit. Because like I agree, like he could be like reincarnated or frozen in time, or like I was like, oh, is he actually part of Jason and the Argonauts or whatever? I don't know. Again, I haven't done enough research on Jason and the Argonauts. But I did think if he is frozen in time, what are the odds and how awkward would it be if he is eventually in a similar outfit to the one from her dad's movie poster? Because if he was a Roman soldier and he's like greased up and helmeted and like tiny shorts, it could get real weird because she hates that poster.
It's going to be a lot to unpack, Piper. Damn. Damn.
I don't think it's going to happen, but look.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's either like a self-awareness thing, or like if he knew the truth, maybe like Hera did something to him or the Greeks did something and he would either want revenge or like wouldn't go along with it. Yeah, like he would choose a side. So we'll see. Sure. But we'll get back to the story here. Now, if what Hera has been saying wasn't ominous enough, she ramps it up, because here are her final two lines, which Jason tries to ask about and she just bulldozes over him. So she says, first, return to your starting point. Your sister will help. So that feels like this camp here in Thali is coming in the mix. And then her second quote is, beware Chicago. Your most dangerous mortal enemy waits there. If you are to die, it will be by her hand.
Clearly, Hera watches Fox News.
Oh.
Which I don't like. Chicago's a very lovely place. I've been there many times.
It's a good town.
But yeah, it everything got super rushed there at the end, and I was really fixated on the fact that it said your most dangerous mortal enemy.
Yeah.
So like gods are immortal, yes,
they're
right?
Immortal,
yes. Demigods are not.
I think yes, they would count as mortal. So my guess is evil demigod in Chicago.
Okay, but monsters are immortal.
Yes, that's how I would view it. And I think the specific reason she said you're tough as a mortal thing is that she knows Gaia, or whoever is the bad person, the big bad of this series, is going to be the biggest threat. So it's this weird qualification of like, it's the hardest, not Gaia, you're going to face,
I see.
But that's
the dungeon boss.
Yeah,
I understand.
Before the act break in the video game boss. Yeah.
Got it.
So Hera fades, Jason wakes, and he wakes yelling, Cyclops! And Piper calms him down. And they're riding on Festus, which is good news. It means they fixed Festus. Jason is confused, and Leo explains that they escaped and that Jason had a nasty concussion, and they should go to a doctor because he was asleep, and you're not supposed to sleep after a concussion.
Asleep and hanging upside down while having a concussion.
No way, that's good.
No
way.
It already is like a concern of swelling of the brain, and nothing's going to cause more swelling of the brain than being upside down.
Come on, go to a doctor.
Oh, we'll just give him some baked goods and he'll be all right.
Paul Will Solace, get him here. Leo asks how he's feeling. Jason says, I just had a concussion. Jason recalls getting punched out by the Cyclops and then it fading to black and that being it. He asks how they defeated the Cyclopes, or I guess he might have just said singular Cyclops because he didn't even know that there were multiple. Piper and Leo Piper says that Leo tore them apart and reveals, oh, Leo has fire powers, by the way. Leo shrugs it off as not being a big deal, and Piper goes, it's a super big deal, and then tells a very detailed version of the story. So I think that's very fun. And the key new information that we get, since there was a bit of a time jump, is that Leo replaced Festus's wiring and got the crew flying just as the Cyclopes reformed. So just as they were whole from the dust and yelling at them, they got out of there. And Jason is impressed with Leo, but he does feel foolish for stepping into an ambush and not being able to help at all. He thinks that he is a trash quest leader. And he also feels bad about not remembering who that son of Mercury that the Cyclopes claimed to have eaten was, because one of Piper or Leo said something like, oh, they said this thing about eating a guy in a purple shirt, kind of like you, in the Latin camp, blah, blah, blah. And Jason's like, man, I feel like I should know who this person is, and I feel really bad that I don't.
Do we know it? Mercury is Hermes, yes?
Correct.
Do we know any other sons of Hermes from the books besides Luke?
Chris Rodriguez, or at least he was in the cabin. I don't know if he was unclaimed or not.
Okay.
But no, I don't think it would be an enemy, no. I feel like it would
see.
probably be off-named person, but it's at least... Jason just has this feeling like he should know them. Maybe that means that whatever the Latin camp is, maybe there's not a lot of people there, so it's a tight-knit group.
Which, again, leads me towards, like, this being, like, again, like, a crew. Maybe the Argonauts? I don't know. But, like, normally you're just like, oh, a Roman! I should have known who the Roman was! Like, you don't know everybody who dresses in the same uniform that you do, necessarily. But I don't know why Rick would write that if it weren't eventually someone that he would actually know.
Oh, interesting.
Because why include that detail?
I think you include the detail just to let people know, like, it's not just a Zeus camp or a Jupiter camp. Even though, spoiler alert, I know the name of the camp. But I would at least think that was just sort of a sprinkle to say there's some other people, and it kind of at least gives you the eye-opening of, oh, so maybe it's a whole, like, Camp Half-Blood, but just Roman version. So it at least expands it to, it's not just Jason, it's not just his weird purple shirt. It is multiple people with purple shirts.
Okay.
Purple's a great color. I have no idea it's purple.
Also, in this moment, the piece of information you just gave me, I am a little spoiled, but I also don't fully know what you mean, so my brain is running in circles right now. I'm being like, wait a minute.
Yeah, there was like a fandom thing that just like seeped into
cool.
zeitgeist.
Well, give it 4 days and I'll know everything.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, he does take solace in knowing that he's not alone. Piper says that he was never alone because he has them. And Jason is still shaken from his dream. He shares it with the others. Piper is confused by the exchange that he had with Hera. Jason says, I don't know either, but he's convinced that he is the gamble and thinks that simply sending him to Camp Half-Blood might have been enough to break some sort of rule and kick things into gear, just based off that instinctual feeling where he just felt like, I am not supposed to be here. So maybe this will kick off a Greek versus Roman thing. I don't know. Piper thinks it's bad. Piper thinks it could be the way that they save everyone, though, and she thinks that the sleeping enemy sounds like the lady that Leo described, the Dirt Woman. So at this, Leo reveals, oh, by the way, everyone, I did see her again. But this time, she was porta potty juice, so slightly different. And he's not sure if she truly cannot be killed, like Hera said, but he does know for certain that you can't defeat her with a toilet seat, because he tried that, and it didn't work. So, helpful to know.
Yeah.
Helpful to know some knowledge.
Leo eternally making do with the things he has on hand.
He's very crafty. He's very handy. You gotta work with the tools you have.
Mm-hmm.
Leo adds that she wanted him to betray them, but he refused. Piper thinks that she's trying to divide them and is worried that they are being toyed with, and she starts thinking, why are we being toyed with? And then she wonders, how does this woman connect to Enceladus, or Enceladus? I haven't talked to Dr. Moy yet about how to pronounce it. And she says that out loud, and Jason goes, Enceladus? And she's like, oh, shoot, oh no, I wasn't supposed to say that. So Piper tries to quick pivot save to go, oh, I think that's one of the names of the giants that I remember, but I'm not sure. It's just like a random name. And we get this quote from the narrator. Jason got the feeling there was a lot more bothering her. But he decided not to press her. She'd had a rough morning.
that has happened several times now, where it's like, well, something else, all of them are being like, well, something else is going on, but I'm just not going to talk about it. This is like, as much as they care about each other, this is a toxic relationship. If you're like, my friend's not doing well, they're struggling, but I'm just going to let them struggle.
Yeah, I feel like for me, this is one of those it's a book things, like you gotta...
Sure, you can't just get everything out in the open right now.
You gotta just let it happen and you gotta laugh it off. But I like that he's being a good dude and trying to factor in her emotions, especially because they have the very complex sort of, we were kind of dating, but not really, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. But then we get a great interjection from Leo where he goes, quote, well, I don't know about enchiladas.
And I'm like, you're from North Houston. You know about enchiladas.
You have opinions about enchiladas. But I was just so happy because, as people know in an earlier episode of the Newest Olympian, I was waiting for someone to make an enchiladas joke. I thought it would be Grover. Glad it was Leo. Leo would have been my secondary vote.
A very good friend of mine has a poster in his house that I hang out in occasionally that has like imaginary space travel posters about different like interstellar locations, and evidently Enceladus or Enceladus is a moon, I think in like Jupiter or Saturn, and so it says like visit Enceladus, and every single time I look at it and just go enchiladas. So I very much felt like Leo when I got to that part of the book. I felt very validated. Yeah,
I'm very excited to talk with Dr. Moya about the whatever we learn about all these folks like Gaia, the Titans, the Giants, all that kind of stuff. I want to know how many there are, and if it makes sense for Enceladus to be the one that seems to be the main one. I know Gaia mentioned the other one, Porphyrion, whatever.
Porposphere.
Yeah, Porposphere.
I'm getting out of this.
We'll get to Porposphere soon. But I wonder if this was someone who was like the most important one according to the mythology, or if there's a bunch of sons of Gaia, and Rick saw the list and was like, ha, one sounds like enchiladas. I should make the most important one, clearly.
As two, we're both improvisers, we know the value of a callback.
Yeah.
It's important.
It's just good, especially when you're doing a book like this, and it doesn't really matter which Titan. Like, yeah, you pick the one with the coolest name. Yeah. Obviously. So Leo says, well, I don't know about enchiladas. And Piper goes, enchiladas. And he goes, whatever. But old Pottyface mentioned another name, Porposphere or something? Just like what a run of dialogue from Leo. Just banger after banger. Piper corrects to Porphyrion, he was the giant king. I think, to really throw in another thing. But I don't think she actually heard that one, so it's a legitimate, I think. Jason guesses that he is the one that kidnapped Hera. Thankfully, Hera brought this up 5 sentences ago. He thinks that that's the one who kidnapped Hera, which kicked off the war between the giants and the gods. Piper confirms, but says that those stories are messy and they can be inconsistent in their retellings, almost as if no one wanted the story to survive. She says the main takeaway, though, is that the giants were almost impossible to kill. Jason says Hera told him that heroes and gods had to work together. And that could be really fun in one of the later books in the series, or even in this one, if we get something where truly the demigods and the gods are fighting side by side. Because in the Percy Jackson books, we sort of got the side by side, but the sides were very far apart, because they were off fighting Typhon, and then the demigods were out defeating Luke and doing all this stuff like on Olympus. But there was very few things where they were literally going together like in the same battle. And I don't think that there was one, really. I think it's always kind of like separated. So to truly have like a get in here and we're all fighting at the same time scene, I think that could be really fun.
Yeah, I hope we get it.
I hope we do too. So Leo says that working together would be hard, given that the gods won't talk to them currently. Does feel like a barrier to entry. So then they decide to continue west. Jason is lost in his thoughts. He's just down bad. He's worrying about everything. He's freaking out about what Hera said. He's freaking out about Piper stuff. He feels bad about what happened at Monocle Motors. He's not a good situation. Then they arrive at Chicago. And Leo asks, how do we find the storm spirits? And then Jason sees what he thinks is a plane, but then it turns into a smoky horse. So he goes, why don't we just follow that one? And that's the end of chapter 25. I have a fun little title for it. I wrote, I Dream of Queenie. Because he dreams of Hera.
Okay, yeah, that's...
So there's this old show on Nick at Night
called... For me, maybe just a simple La Cage aux Foie, the birdcage. I think I pronounced that incorrectly or whatever.
Nice.
But then in my mind, I'm picturing Hera and Jason being played by Robin Williams and Nathan Lane.
Correct.
But Nathan Lane in drag is Hera, which I would pay money to see.
Of course. Yeah, no, that'd be good. I like it. Yeah. Okay, let's get into the beginning of chapter 26 before we break for intermission. This one, also called Jason, but this one starts. Jason was afraid they'd lose their target. The Ventus moved like, well, the wind. It's great. Uncle Rick is just hitting. They have a bit of a contentious time trying to follow the wind spirit because Leo's driving and then Jason is saying you gotta get closer. Piper's saying no, you can't stay too close, you gotta be inconspicuous. Then Festus runs into a building. That's never good.
Basically, this is me trying to complete a mission in GTA. Grand Theft Auto. I got spotted. I ran into a building.
The y-axis is inverted.
I've got 3 stars. The Titans are after me. No.
So they have this contentious time, but they are able to stay undetected, and then they are close enough to do so. And eventually, they do see that there are 2 Venti, not just one Ventus, and they are zipping around. They're going all up and down buildings and stuff. I'm very curious as to what the residents of Chicago would think that these things are. Maybe like really big birds or something.
Sure, but like, when you picture them in your brain, all I picture is, not to purposefully loop it back, but I picture Peeves from the Harry Potter movies.
Okay.
That's what I think of.
Of the Venti?
Yeah, or maybe like Slimer from Ghostbusters. Like, I'm just kind of picturing like a kind of see-through but strangely corporeal, like, it's...
Yeah.
Do they have faces, you think?
To me, it's almost like, again, it's like the movie Death Eaters who like poof into smoke, which I hated because they can fly and it ruined the whole thing of Voldemort being able to fly. But in my brain, it was like, when they're flying in my eyes, they're just like a moving cyclone kind of thing moving around.
Oh, got it.
And they don't really have a face and stuff, but then when they stop, they kind of like the spinning stops and they take more of like a humanoid, kind of like wispy sort of view.
They're the Roto-Rooter logo.
I like
Google it during the break. You'll know what I'm talking about.
I was thinking more of there was a fair amount of, I played travel baseball growing up in New Jersey, and there was like a couple of things that, I don't know if anyone has this sports thing, but like there's certain things where like a lot of teams would be the same thing, and because I don't know if it's like the time or there were a lot of like cyclones and twisters and hurricanes. Like a lot of teams were like, what's scary? Oh, the big wind that spins around. So like, I guess because at that point, like everyone's dad on the team was in their like late 30s, so they loved the movie Twister, so they were like, yeah! I feel like I played a lot of hurricane-based, Twister-based baseball teams growing up in New Jersey, and it was all like an angry eyes just over a spinny thing, and it had like arms and legs sticking out, and a glove and a bat. Like, it's like that without the glove and the bat.
Yeah,
that's what I'm seeing.
They are always like a little bit scary. Like, I played on the Ballard Wasps and the Ferndale Red Lions, but like really you should be like a member of like the Scranton Social Security Insolvency.
Yes. Okay, we need more scary things that are just like existential dread.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get the West Seattle. My friends are hanging out without me and saying mean things about me.
Yeah. The Alabama Alone with My Thoughts.
That'd be good.
Being in Alabama is scary enough. Sorry to all the listeners in Alabama.
They don't know how to work phones. Not you. You know how.
Doubling down. I love it.
Why was how do you know that the toothbrush was invented in Alabama?
How's that?
Otherwise it would have been a teeth brush. I live in Texas. There's a lot of Alabama. Don't make me get into Louisiana territory. So, Leo then points out another dozen hanging out near a public art installation near a lake. And I wrote the bean.
I also wrote the bean. I wrote not the bean.
My Chicago knowledge is so limited because I've only been to Chicago for a wedding, tours, and then LeakyCon, but I was there early enough so I got to go to Lollapalooza and I saw New Jeans, which was amazing, and then Carly Rae Jepsen, which changed my life. You gotta see her. Her Lollapalooza set is on YouTube, but you gotta see her.
Do you know the actual name of the bean?
It has a full name.
Yeah, that's not called the bean.
Okay. Yeah, what is it? Because I have a bean story after.
Does anyone here know it?
Woo! Okay, striped sweater. What is it?
The cloud gate.
That's correct. It's the Cloud Gate. Yes.
Why is it the Cloud Gate?
I mean, in my
5
mind,
bonus points to you.
maybe because it like reflects the sky in it, and it's like a gateway to the clouds. But honestly, I don't know why. But I didn't also know it was called the Cloud Gate.
Here's a silly, like, almost immediately I regret saying it out loud because I realized it 2 seconds later. Thought I was scrolling Twitter and it had a thing that said like the bean has reopened, and I out loud, and Kelly was sitting across. I was like, you can go in the bean?
And it's actually the flight of the navigator ship.
Spaceship bean. Yeah. No, but I said that and then immediately I was like, oh, it was probably like the park surrounding the bean was closed for repairs, and Kelly said that before I got there. You should, I mean, I would imagine can you go, can you go on the bean?
I do not think you can go in the bean. Also, I just realized I should say yet again, if you don't know what Flight of the Navigator is during the break, because I'm looking at the faces of some of the people in the audience.
No, yeah, what is it? I knew Spaceship Earth. I was making an Epcot Ball reference.
Oh, Flight of the Navigator is a Disney movie from like 1982 where a child gets inside of a spaceship and the robot who operates it, he's the navigator, but the spaceship is like, it has an AI robotic pilot and they fly everywhere in a chrome Nerf football. But the best part of the movie is it opens with a series of dogs catching frisbees in slow motion in a park. It has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. But it is like, it's basically YouTube videos and TikTok before that existed. All I want to do is just watch these cute dogs catching frisbees. For that alone, worth watching the movie.
Amazing. Anyway, Percy Jackson. So it's not the bean, but I did find it weird that if they're going to say a public art installation but not describe it, I was like, that's strange. And then they describe it like 2 sentences later. Leo asks which one is Dylan so he can throw something at him, which we've seen work, so valid. And then we get a little bit of a description of this thing. So Jason focuses on the art and he's unnerved. It's just a public fountain, but it's eerily familiar. Describing it, he says, quote, 2 5-story monoliths rose from either end of a long granite reflecting pool. The monoliths seem to be built of video screens flashing the combined image of a giant face that spewed water into the pool. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but it looked like a high-tech, supersized version of that ruined reflecting pool he'd seen in his dreams, with those 2 dark masses jutting from either end. As Jason watched, the image on the screens changed to a woman's face with her eyes closed. So, feels very Gaia, scary situation coded. I was wondering at first is this a real thing, but then because it was such a mimic of the other thing, it feels like specifically just for the story.
But you know that art do you know that art installation?
I don't. I've only been to Grant Park for Lollapalooza, so I wasn't really in art mode.
It's basically right next to the bean/cloud gate. It's exactly what they describe. It's different people's faces, but there is strangely like a stream of water coming out that looks like they're just.
Oh, and it is like TV
it's exactly what they describe.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it actually exists. I didn't realize it had been around since like 2010, but yeah, it's a real thing you can see in Chicago.
Interesting.
But what I was like, I feel like there have been several times now where we have gotten the imagery of like a pool with 2 like either
tall
like
things, the cages.
Yeah, spires or whatever on either side. And this was, I had a moment where he was like, oh, then I had like the vision and I remembered it. It was connected to like being with Hera. And then I thought to myself, if we've already had this like desolated, things are kind of like rocky or whatever or messed up, and it's the same thing where there's like these obelisks on either side of the pool, maybe those visions were post-nuclear Hera Chicago. Oh. Are we seeing the past or could we be seeing the future? This is my big prediction. I'm going to make it now. I'm going to have my Ludo Bagman moment.
You're saying what she did in the dream affected the setup?
No, rather that the vision that he is describing of there being like everything's like obliterated.
Yeah.
And there's still those like things on either side of the pool. Maybe that's in the future and it's that location after Hera's rage goes off.
Oh, so you think wherever he's going is actually still intact, but it will get destroyed later?
Well, I don't know if it's where he's going. I thought that it was like, it's right there. It's that spot. So not like a future destination, but it's showing the consequences of what happens if Hera goes off.
So it's actually this thing in Chicago.
That's right.
Okay.
Which it's not actually that important.
No, but here's my follow-up question.
Yeah.
How did the surrounding redwood trees get to Chicago?
Look. We haven't met the other 4 demigods yet, maybe, and we don't know what their powers are, and maybe one of them has the ability to summon redwoods.
Because in my brain it was always in California because he saw surrounding redwood trees.
Yeah, I mean, look, what's the worst power? Being able to suddenly apply makeup to your face or summoning redwoods?
Summoning redwoods would be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool. Yes, so we're seeing Gaia in here. It's creepy, it's interesting, and I think that's a perfect place to break for intermission. Ooh, ah. So if you are listening on the podcast, we're going to take a break for the Lost Hero. So let's all say goodbye to the podcast people.
Goodbye, podcast people.
And now we can talk about intermission for you all fine folks here. Woo! Cool, fun stuff you can do. So there are a couple different things you can do during intermission. Obviously, if you need to take care of business, take care of business. Powder your nose, go to the bar, get a drink, get some food, do whatever. Or there's other fun things that you can do, such as checking out Abby at the merch table. Woo! So we've got a fantastic merch table over there set up. We've got the shirts, posters, we've got the beads, that's new, we've got pins, stickers.
As an owner of a pair of TNO socks, they're actually really good socks, I'm just letting you know.
Thank you! So we've got some socks. So yes, get all of that. The more things you buy, the less stuff I have in my apartment, and there's more room for baby clothes. So feel free to purchase things. But you can check out the merch table there. The other thing that you can do is we're going to end the show with some Q&A. So if you want to send in a question to thenewestolympian@gmail.com, just put something in the subject line that makes it clear that you're here in the Seattle show, whether that is saying that you love Sue Bird, or you are happy that the bridge to West Seattle is repaired. Whatever, just put something in the subject line that makes it clear you're here at the Seattle show. You can ask us about Percy Jackson, you can ask us about anything, you can ask us about Seattle thoughts. I've got them. But once intermission is complete, we'll be back in like 10-15 minutes or so. Once we are back, we will talk about the rest of this chapter and do some fun Q&A. See you all soon. I missed you all so dearly. Let's get into the rest of this chapter. So, we looked at the weird art installation and stuff. Woohoo! Let's see what's up now. So, they are checking this out. Jason calls out to Leo, who sees what he's seeing. The screens go dark, the venti combine into a single funnel cloud, and then they go down a drain. Piper asks how they will follow them now. Leo says maybe we shouldn't follow them at all. The whole we're supposed to avoid the earth thing, let's just tap out. And he adds that the fountain is just giving off bad vibes. Jason feels similarly to Leo, but he knows that they must follow. So he instructs Leo to land Festus somewhere in the park, and they will go and inspect on foot.
Great. While we're talking about funnel clouds, I need to amend a statement that I made. The logo I was thinking of was not for Roto-Rooter, it was for local plumbing company Beacon Plumbing. Wait! Stop freaking. Call Beacon. Thank you, Marshawn Lynch. Thank you, everyone in the crowd who just said call Beacon. Roto-Rooter is just a circle with some water in it. Boo.
I hope I don't get any emails in between that and the mid-roll break.
That was the only reason why I corrected it, is because I knew you were going to get tons of people being like, look, my dad's Mr. Roto-Rooter.
My father's Stephen Roto-Rooter. So, Leo knows that... Oh, wait, sorry. That was the wrong spot. Bad vibes on foot. Cool. So they're in Grant Park, which is where Lollapalooza happens, and Jason thinks that it must be a nice place in the summer, but it's frozen over now. And Leo knows that Festus just can't hang around here, otherwise he will get arrested for loitering. I feel like something else would happen to the giant dragon, right?
Impounded at the most. Arrested, good luck.
So instead what Leo does is he pulls a safety whistle out of his tool belt, because a dog whistle was rejected as one of the recommended items from the tool belt, and he says that Coach Hedge would be jealous of this whistle and gives it to Festus, or doesn't give it to Festus. Festus eats it. Yeah. He plays it for Festus, and then says, if you hear this noise, come get us, but otherwise you can fly around wherever you like. Now, Piper takes one step and then shrieks in pain. Jason guesses that the nectar is wearing off. Piper shrugs it off, but then she begins to shiver, and Jason remembers, oh right, I promised to get her a new snowboarding jacket. I hope I live long enough to live up to that promise. And I'm so invested in this now. When he first brought it up, I was like, I hope they do that, I hope he doesn't forget. Now that it's come out twice, if he doesn't get her a snowboarding jacket by the end of the book, then she should go along with enchiladas and destroy the world. Agreed. Twice promised to Jack. Come on. So, they approach the fountain, and the plaque reads, Crown Fountain, Crownton, and it is mostly empty, save for a few puddles that are starting to freeze over, but Jason finds it weird that any water would be there at all, given how cold it is. So he thinks that is strange, and then he also thinks about the monitors and the face and everything, and he's just thinking, everything's weird, everything's strange, I don't like what's going on. He climbs down the maintenance hole, and he's surprised that it doesn't smell completely like butt. And then when Piper and Leo join, Piper asks if all sewers are this nice, and Leo says, no, trust me. And I wrote, how does he know? And then immediately Jason asks, how do you know this? Leo clarifies, I ran away 6 times, I've slept in some weird places, and I think that would also explain him being concerned for the loitering offense. This tracks for, stuff he's run into previously.
Yeah, that makes sense. Though I do, on the loitering topic, real quick, he dismissed Festus. Where in Chicago do you think Festus went?
Oh, he probably caught a game at Wrigley.
I thought that was like a solid option, or he could just like sit on top of an L train and go in a circle for a while. Not loitering if you're moving.
Yeah. Look, if he did it above, it depends on it's the winter, right? So maybe football's going on, but he could be the Goodyear blimp. Like that, the mist, it would look like the Goodyear blimp.
Or like he's a mechanical thing made by humans, kind of. He could just go to the Art Institute and be an installation.
Yeah. Then Ferris Bueller walks by.
Yeah.
So then Jason says that they should go south because that's where a draft is blowing. Piper stumbles as she starts to walk, but then Jason catches her because the Lost Hero is a K-drama and I will die on this hill. Jason thinks that they should rest since they've been going nonstop for over a day. He asks Leo if he can pull any food from his belt besides mince, and Leo is very excited that he can take on his new role as Chef Leo. So he goes off to do so. That way, Jason and Piper can have a moment. So they rest a bit, Jason worrying about whoever lies ahead, Piper saying, look, whatever happened back at Monocle Motors is not your fault, don't worry about it, and you shouldn't feel bad about being jumped. But Jason still feels silly for leaving her alone and walking into a trap, thought he should have known better, and he starts to say, I should have known, but then he realizes, and I imagine him just like saying it like this to her and then turning off to the middle distance and realizing, I should have known a lot of things. I don't know my last name. I don't know where I'm from. Why is my shirt purple? Who is that guy? Like, he just laundry lists all the things that he should know, and it just wrecks him. So he's also further confused by Hera saying that taking his memories kept him alive. He thinks that this information could be crucial in a battle and stuff, so he's very confused about what's going on. And then we get this quote at the end of this little Hera grumbling quote. He was starting to understand why Annabeth had wanted to leave the goddess in her cage. The Hera hate is great.
It is
fun.
Though, like, man, I keep on going back and forth, like, strongly between, like, oh, she's actually horrible. Like, I don't know if we're going to get the switcheroo.
No, I don't think she's going to be truly evil. There's too much of her. I think she might have done something bad. Like, I can see her doing a I didn't factor in your thoughts kind of thing, like whatever this gamble is. Okay. It could be something where it's like she looked at it too objectively, but I don't think we're getting a situation where she's like, actually, Guy is my best friend and we're working together. I don't think that's gonna happen.
Rick loves a switcheroo though, and like we haven't had all that many yet in this book, so I feel like something's coming.
Well,
but maybe it's not that.
It might be coming at the end of this chapter.
So,
Piper tells Jason to cut himself some slack. Jason is entranced by her eyes in the fire. Jason says he knows how much the whole Miss Fake Boyfriend thing must suck. Piper says, that's also not your fault. And then she tugs at her braids, and Jason is all hubba hubba again because the Aphrodite blessing is faded. Quote, with the makeup and the dress and the perfect hair, she looked about 25, glamorous, and completely out of his league. He never thought about beauty as a form of power, but that's the way Piper had seemed. powerful. He liked regular Piper better, someone he could hang out with. But the weird thing was, he couldn't quite get that other image out of his head. It hadn't been an illusion. That side of Piper was there too. She just did her best to hide it. And this is feeling a little bit too much like, you don't know you're beautiful, that's what makes you beautiful territory, and I'm not like it.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying when he is considerate of her. I think it's fine with the, you don't have to put on the pretty girl stuff, but this is a little bit one step where I'm like, all right, dude, like, kind of weird to be like, oh, she looked too hot, and that was bad, because I thought she was out of my league, so I'm not attracted to her anymore. I don't know, it feels weird.
Also, do we need to assign so much value to physical appearance? Some of us hunchback, lumbering humanoids feel a certain way about the matter.
Jason brings up Piper almost saying something about her dad earlier, saying, oh yeah, you were going to say something about your dad before. Do you want to continue? And Piper's like, oh, no. So Jason goes, I'm assuming he's in trouble. And then we get this quote, over at the fire, Leo stirred some sizzling bell peppers and meat in a pan. Yeah, baby, almost there. Perfect.
I do think, though, that was the moment where they wrote that Piper traced out a scream on the wall, which I just think is like very funny. The idea of someone going, just writing A's in perpetuity. A funny visual to me, but it brought up the dad.
Just perfect comedic timing of Leo to jump in at this moment. Piper says that she can't talk about it, and Jason says, we're your friends, of course you can. And Piper goes, I wish I could. And then, of course, Leo bursts in, again, exactly at the right moment, with the completed meal. It is pepper and beef tacos with chips and salsa. Piper and Jason are stunned. Leo responds, Chef Leo's Taco Garage is fixing you up. And by the way, it's tofu, not beef, beauty queen, so don't freak, just dig in. Leo, batting 1,000 in these chapters. Iconic move, and we need to get Leo's Taco Garage? Chef Leo's Taco Garage, get that on an apron, pronto.
Yeah, you know who would love those tacos? Grover.
Cool.
Not an enchilada.
These two folks need to meet.
They do.
These boys need to hang out.
I mean, they are serving the same role in two different series, but they do
They
need
gotta
to
hang out.
Yeah.
Grover will make enchiladas. Leo will make tacos. They'll make a Mexican restaurant together. It will be fantastic. We get this quote next from narrator Jason. Jason wasn't sure about tofu. Of course not, because he's an American! I can't have tofu! It's gross! Not to put my dad on blast, but he does this every time I cook something with tofu, and then he eats it and it's delicious. And I'm like, yes, Dad, you can do it. Tofu to me is one of those things where like it directly correlates how good it is with how good the chef is. Like if you've had bad tofu, bad chef. Tofu tastes like nothing, so as long as you're flavoring your dish properly, it should be great. All it does is add texture and protein.
Yeah.
If you're messing up tofu,
And it's
how about the Food Network, baby?
It's not hard. I made tofu katsu just the other night. I do also like in the dish though. He says that it's the tacos, but with also chips and salsa. And I'm like, we know where he got that salsa from. He took the salsa from the case that the Cyclops brought over, put it in his tool belt. I bet that's Cyclops salsa.
It had to be good. If you're a Cyclops, it's got to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be the good stuff.
Most likely.
It's gotta be
What
good.
other joys do they have in their lives?
Gotta have the spicy food.
Ragging on Alabamians and Cyclops.
Gonna get some 1-star reviews. Now, Jason, though he was not sure of the tofu, he notes that the tacos taste as good as they smell. Leo tries lightening the mood with jokes as they eat, and that makes Jason glad that Leo's here to ease the tension. However, he also wishes that he was alone with Piper. Hubba hubba. But then, he feels bad for thinking that. Jason and Piper talk a little bit. Jason says that Piper should go to sleep. She does without protesting, and I was very excited. Ooh, dreams from Piper at the next chapter, but that's not what happens, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've also fallen asleep 2 seconds after eating tacos.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So Jason and Leo are chatting a little bit, and then Jason asks if what Piper said about his fire powers are true. And Leo confirms by making a small ball of fire appear in his hand. Jason thinks it's awesome and wonders why he kept it hidden. Leo says, I didn't want to look like even more of a freak. And then Jason, in response to this, says, quote, I have lightning and wind powers. Piper can turn beautiful and charm people into giving her BMWs. You're no more a freak than we are, and hey, maybe you can fly too. Like jump off a building and yell flame on. I feel like at this point in time, Disney, yes, was publishing the book, but they hadn't had the Marvel rights yet. So very funny that this is now like a very in-universe joke to make. that it could find its way into whatever adaptation comes
Well,
through.
actually, the Fantastic Four are owned by Fox,
Oh,
which is a
you're right. And that's why all the movies are bad.
I do want to bring up, though, that it's a good thing that Piper was asleep when Jason said Piper can turn beautiful. Think about your words before you use them, my friend. From plain as burlap to a beautiful woman.
Is that a quote from...
No, I just made it.
Okay. But I don't know if that was like, I don't know, like when you take a glasses off someone in an 80s movie. So Leo laughs that if he did that, all you would see is a flaming kid falling to his doom, followed by shouting something spicier than flame on. Leo also brings up that Nissa gave him the impression that the Hephaestus cabin does not like fire powers, and whenever a kid with those powers comes through, bad things happen. But Jason puts forth, maybe it's the opposite of the chicken and the egg, maybe someone only comes through when things are bad, and they are needed most. I like this line of thinking from Jason. Leo says it's possible, but he states that his abilities are not always a gift, and Jason guesses, oh, are you referring to the night your mom passed? And Leo doesn't answer, but him not saying anything and not being jovial is enough of an answer, so Jason tries to convince Leo that her death was not his fault. He says that the Dirt Woman, I love that they've all embraced Dirt Woman as her official name, says that the Dirt Woman, capital D, capital W, is trying to shake his confidence and make him feel like a failure, when the truth is that he's important. But Leo says, she told me that, and I think that I'm going to be the make-or-break person in the prophecy, and I'm worried that I might not be up for the task. Jason has the urge to say everything's going to be okay, but he knows, I don't know that. That might not be true. I don't know anything. What's my last name again? All right, Derulo. So, he also thinks demigod lives are too unpredictable and can end at any moment. So yeah, I can't predict anything at all. What am I going to do? Leo asks Jason if he ever wonders about the other four heroes. Jason definitely has, but he's done so.